when Christopher Nolan announced that he was gonna do a World War II movie, I was one of those people who was kind of excited about it. Not because I love Christopher Nolan's work, but because he's a respected director who knows how to make a really good movie if you ask most movie lovers about his work. Me, on the other hand, I'm not the biggest fan of his work. Most of his movies I don't necessarily like. I will watch them, but like there's still few movies that I haven't seen that I need to see, but it's like this dude knows how to make a movie that tells a coherent story. So when it comes to Dunkirk, this is one of those stories that I wondered about if you ever went to high school or elementary school, if you were taught World War II, events of the World War II, you know the story of Dunkirk pretty much by heart because it's a very simple story. English Allied forces, pretty much English and French and Belgian, they got stuck in this town of Dunkirk, and so evacuation had to take place, and it happened via civilian boats, and over 300,000 people got evacuated, and so it's like this is a very simple story. So when I heard that Christopher Nolan is going to do a movie about this specific event, I was very what do you say?
Skeptical?
No, not skeptical. I wondered about how he was gonna do it, because it's like, how can you tell a story about an evacuation during World War II there is nothing spectacular about this story.
Actually,
in
everything
itself.
about it is spectacular, but the thing is, how do you set it up? That's the question. Do you do it? Do you make an intro into it? Do you explain what led to it? Or do you just, because putting it out there, just making the movie about the evacuation itself maybe didn't make the most sense? And so the question was how he's gonna do it. Is he gonna give you an intro to it? And the question is no, he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
No
He
point.
just takes you right
smack
in.
dab in the middle.
He doesn't
of
even
Dunkirk.
give us the year, or he gives us like basic, like Germans invading, you need to evacuate, blah blah blah, and so events start taking place. And as like from the first minute you get sucked into this movie. I mean, feeling hungry also helped, because all these soldiers were really hungry, they barely ate that day, and just like the whole experience of watching this movie to me was very realistic. It was set in the real world. Unlike the previous movie that we watched today, we watched two war movies, one set in the fantasy world, the other one set in the real world, and so like we can go on and compare them, but we're not gonna do that because they're not really comparable. But this movie is so very well done and executed. This is probably one of my favorite Christopher Nolan movies, if not the favorite. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of his work. I liked Interstellar, I liked his Dark Knight series, Prestige and Memento, not so much, but whatever. You know, so speaking of Prestige and Dark Knight, Michael Caine's voice is heard in this movie. We get Tom Hardy in this movie, who does he probably had the best role. Like, he was flying an Spitfire airplane and just fighting off German planes and knocking them into the sea. Speaking of the aerial battles, like,
back to the movie, you're given three specific point of views. One is the, as you already said, aerial battles. The second one would be the British
evacuation
sailors who are coming with their small fleet to
civilian
evacuate.
boats,
Civilians who got recruited by the Royal Navy. Their ships actually got recruited by the Royal Navy to help out the evacuation. And the third one is the evacuation itself happening in France.
Yeah, the Dunkirk point at the dock, or at the Dunkirk. And speaking of the dock, we get Kenneth Branagh, who was also great to see as the colonel or whatever he was, and just trying to calm his soldiers and make them aware that help is on the way, even though the whole situation seems so hopeless.
He's orchestrating the evacuation.
Yeah, the whole situation seems hopeless because Germans are invading. Belgian and French troops are protecting pretty much the city, not just the English troops. And so the English troops who are pretty much, I mean, they're at their ends. I mean, they're at the end of the rope. They got sea on the one hand and Germans on the other. They're going hungry, they're barely alive, they're barely walking, and all they want to do is get home, and the whole situation is very hopeless. And like I said, if you learn World War II history in school, like, you know the events that took place, you know how it ends, and this is that's probably the best part about this movie, because to me this movie was so suspenseful that at certain points I wanted to, like,
It helped to know how the story ends.
Yeah, because at points it seemed like this
as
wasn't
far
going
as
to
the
end
movie
anytime
itself-
soon, and probably not going to end at all. So
As far as the movie itself, it actually probably could have used a few more extras, but here's the thing, there's certain
numbers that are needed and talked about in the
you're
movie.
repetitive as far as the casting goes. Certain actors show up multiple times.
Yeah.
Extras are pretty much the same for any shot that involves more than 5 people.
Yeah.
But that put it so at no point. So even though 300,000 troops
So,
were evacuated, at no point you actually see them.
Yeah.
You see about
30, 40 other people, but you see them
at
as
one
10
point
or
you
15.
see lines. So maybe at one point, but that's probably CGI. So at one point you're probably looking. The most you ever see is about 1,000 of them, but for
And
the most
Christopher
part,
Nolan
you
isn't
see-
known for use of CGI anyway, so it's like, I
But-
thought that was CGI.
So at no point you actually
Because they
get to
did very different
see.
uniforms.
You get to feel it as far as because it really is realistic.
Very realistic. Very
But
realistic.
as far as you getting, I don't know, an aerial shot of all the troops being evacuated, you don't see it. Certain scenes get, yeah, well, you get different point of view. So certain scenes you actually get to see from multiple points of view, and
that was a cool thing too.
and
so-
even the British sailors who are coming to evacuate the troops, you only see about a dozen ships at any point, which is nowhere near enough to evacuate 300,000 people. So.
But yeah, that's
So you don't see the
how movie making
You know.
goes. So yeah, like
Probably
there's only
could've
so many
used-
people you can put on
probably
front
could
of
have used
camera.
more extras, but for the most part, it really is realistic.
Very realistic, set in the real world.
You get to feel of what actually happened when the British attack, when the Germans
It-
attack. You don't see it, other than bullets flying and
And I
3
think
planes. But
yeah,
you know,
but listen, this was supposed to be a PG-13 movie. As far as I know, I didn't check, but listen, for a PG-13 war movie, this depicted war and the cruelty of war. Very much like, I would say this is right there with Saving Private Ryan, or even the, I don't know, I'm gonna say Band of Brothers. So
listen,
like this is right.
overall, you're given a story. Like you said, you're probably familiar with the story. It's really nice to see it on the big screen, and it actually is really. Christopher Nolan does a fantastic job with it.
Definitely. Like this guy knows
Definitely
how to
worth,
make a movie.
yeah, definitely worth watching. The camera work itself is brilliant as well. Certain angles you get, pretty fun stuff.
Yeah, one could say that the aerial battles are not necessarily spectacular or even like screen-worthy,
fun.
but it is
It's
the
not
way
they're not, but they are realistic.
they are very realistic.
Usually
but
when you see aerial battles, it's like
You
boom,
watch
and the
planes,
other one
yeah.
explodes. Here, you actually see how he chases him. You actually see how he has to acquire
those
the target.
scenes are
which
very
basically
hard to make,
World War
probably,
II.
so-
So certain stuff, it's not as easy as they usually decipher it on the movies. Here, they do.
like
The
I
whole
said,
movie
I
is
enjoyed,
realistic.
Yeah, I enjoyed the aerial battles the most out of the whole movie. Even though both, like the whole movie, like every scene in this movie, takes you in, pulls you in, and just doesn't let you go. It holds you in there every scene. So
Like you said, it's very suspenseful. So
Very-
it really
very
helps to
Hitchcockian,
actually.
very
It
Hitchcockian.
actually helps to know how the story ends.
it does. It does.
You want to rate it?
I'm gonna rate it at. I'm gonna give it the same rating, 25 out of 30, man.
Alright, I'm probably gonna go with 25. I liked it a little bit more than Planet of the Apes. I was really impressed with
They're
everything.
different movies.
Yeah. I was
Let-
really
let's-
impressed with everything that was going on there. The way it was done. Yeah, 25.
Yeah. So that's it for us for today. We're coming next week, probably around, I don't know, Wednesday or Thursday, if not sooner. Till next time, Beige Bros out.